My hat is off to you. It was a superb job on Wednesday night. I'm usually exhausted because I've been up since 3:30 in the morning, having done Fox and Friends on Wednesdays. I was riveted to the screen.
Well, thank you. That's really very nice, and coming from you, somebody I respect. I mean, if Brian said it, I don't really care.
Hey, all right, there we go again, Chris. Hey, let me ask you this: when you're approaching the debate, something I probably will never get a chance to do, are you constantly checking yourself to not sound, even though I know you are nonpartisan, but to not sound partisan because of what you've witnessed as a viewer in the past?
Well, I mean, in this case, it's not partisan because you're not, but you don't want to pick sides. I mean, the one thing, particularly at this point in the process, we've had so many of these debates, and it's one of the reasons I think the debate stood out, and as it turned out, we got the highest ratings of any Republican or Democratic debate on television so far this year, which is kind of great, is that people are getting tired of it, and they're getting tired of the talking points. So you want to inject some life into it, and the only conceivable way to do that as a moderator is to try to pit them against each other, to try to get them to say to each other's faces what they've been saying behind their backs. So you're trying to push the envelope a little bit. And the one concern you have in that process is, you don't want to be rude, and you want to be sure if you're going to bash people or try and make people go after each other, that you're an equal opportunity, that you're not picking favorites or something.
Chris, you thought I was kidding, and I did go a little extreme, but my point was totally sincere this morning when I asked, can we get more confrontation? And guess what CNN has done? They've booked Ron Paul and Governor Huckabee to square off in a two-person debate.
That's fine. Neither of them is going to be president, but that's fine. I love that when they talk to each other. I mean, the one thing, if you wanted to know what we really go in, and I can speak for Wendell and Britt as well as myself, the one thing we're constantly say to each other in the whole process as we're thinking up questions, as we're talking about the production and just the way the debate is going to unfold, it's about them. It's not about us. I mean, to me, a perfect debate would be that you asked one question and then they all just fell upon each other and started arguing, and we could sort of sit back in our chairs.
I agree.
All right, but one of the great things that you guys did the other night, you did it with Ron Paul when you followed up with what I thought was the best question of the evening, and I thought he had a pretty good answer. And Britt did it when he allowed Ron Paul and Mike Huckabee to go back and forth a la Lincoln and Douglas, was to know when to deviate from the format. That's the way I would put it. And that is an instinct that you and Britt and Wendell have from your experience at this, and it made it fascinating. You did it just at the right time.
You can't come away, maybe there are one or two people there that I'm not so impressed with, but the vast majority of them, and even Ron Paul, I certainly disagree with an awful lot of what he has to say. He's not a dumb man. He's smart, has a focused sense of what he believes in. He obviously has some followers who are vociferous. I will tell you, they were coming up to us before, during, and after the debate saying, hey, got to give Congressman Paul more time. But they are smart people, and that's one of the problems, to bring this full circle, that I think that Fred Thompson is going to have. Not that he's not smart, but he's not in fighting trim. I mean, one of the reasons these guys are good, and you just look at Rudy Giuliani and how much better he is now in the debates than he was in the first debate, is because of the fact that he's been through the process several times. And, it's mid-season for all these guys while it's still preseason for Fred Thompson. I think when he gets up on a stage for the first time and they start shooting at him and asking him about various stands he's taken over the years, he's going to wish that he had announced in July and worked out the kinks then, not in September and October.
Subtleties of the presentation. Word is, according to our people, that he ad-libs his speeches just out of notes, and because of that, there's not that rhythm of applause lines built in. Therefore, his speeches end up being seminars rather than rallies. Have you ever seen a guy have a campaign where they ad-lib their speeches?
Well, I can remember Ronald Reagan when I covered him back in 1980, and that's the first presidential campaign I ever covered, which isn't a bad one to do. He oftentimes would not read his speech. He basically had it in his head, and so he would do it that way.
I was reading last night
But I mean, to take your point, let me just say, Brian, the idea of sort of ad-lib, he's been, to me, a little too casual on the stuff.
Well, I was reading last night the emails, you see them as well, from our Fox News Channel producer, Aaron Bruns, whose assignment yesterday was to follow Fred. And at the first speech, he was absolutely bored stiff, and so was the audience. By the end of the day, Fred got a little better, but still not rousing the crowds, rallying the troops. I think Aaron said, this guy's starting with a whimper rather than a bang.
Well, again, it is not easy, and you do get better, and you find what works. And I think that's the biggest problem of having this long, summer-long delay when his campaign was in some degree of disarray, is the fact that he is going to have to do this all in mid-season. He's going to have to do where everybody else was able to work it out when people weren't paying so much attention. You know, we have not done this for every other candidate, but we had one of our top political people with him every step of the way. So any mistake he makes or any bump or just, you know, a kind of blah speech, we find out about it.
All right, John McCain, do you think if things change in Iraq, things change for McCain?
I don't know, but you know something? He should be boosted by what's happened in Iraq because he was right. And it was a very high-risk position, as it was for the president. Back in 2004 and 5 and 6, he was saying that we're screwing up the conduct of this war and that Donald Rumsfeld's doing a lousy job. And I remember vividly, because I think it was the first time he answered the question, saying to him on Fox News Sunday a couple of years ago, do you have full confidence in Don Rumsfeld? And just, you know, straight as he could be, straight talk express, no, I don't. And then, conversely, when everybody thought just about that George W. Bush was crazy, when he announced the troop surge, the one person, and it was a pretty risky thing, and at that point, remember, in early 2007, McCain was still the front runner, said, I'm completely and totally for the surge. And, you know, he was right before about the problems of the war, and he was right now about the fact that the surge is having some success, so it ought to redound to his benefit.
You were just a few feet from him for a couple of hours the other night, and you got to question him. Does he have the fire in his belly, or was Mike Huckabee's tribute to John McCain's sense of honor a basic recognition of the fact that this is McCain's last hurrah?
Well, it may be, but I will say this. I didn't feel tremendous passion in the first half hour of the debate, but when it got to Iraq and it got to national security, you bet he was passionate. And, you know, it's a high-risk thing because obviously there still is not tremendous support for this war among Republicans as well as Democrats. He has decided he's really going to stake his candidacy and his attempt at a comeback on the idea, I was right about Iraq before, I'm right about Iraq now, I know more about keeping you safe than these other guys do, and, you know, they're not going to call it the Straight Talk Express, he's going to call it the No Surrender Tour, which has, implications both for his campaign as well as for our situation in Iraq. Very interesting.
Hey, Chris, here's the highlight of the debate from Wednesday night.
So, Congressman Paul, and I'd like you to take 30 seconds to answer this. You're basically saying that we should take our marching orders from Al-Qaeda. If they want us off the Arabian Peninsula, we should leave?
No! That was great.
You were so quick, Chris.
It's funny. That's the first time I've heard it. But, you know, that was one of the things, and it's interesting to hear the sound there because it very much reflects what was in the room. It was one of the things I loved about the debate. The crowd, and it was a lot of kids because it was at the University of New Hampshire, were totally into this. I mean, it was like a sporting event.
Yeah.
When you go to the Museum of Broadcasting Hall of Fame, that's what it'll be like. A lot of college kids to be there to make Wallace feel welcome.
Why do you do this?
How much longer will people be listening to this clip that we just heard at the Broadcasting Hall of Fame? Probably forever.
Probably forever. All right, a guy who's still sharp after all these years. Chris Wallace, thanks so much for joining us.
That's right. Listen, I wake up in the morning, and if I do, it's a good day.
God bless you, Chris. We'll be watching you Sunday. Thanks for joining us.
The lines of communication are open both ways. You're a part of it with Brian and the Judge on Fox News Talk.